Welcome to today's webinar, Hackers and the Human Factor, Securing Government and Education. I'm your moderator, James Baker of the Public Sector Technology Exchange. I want to thank everyone from all over America for joining us to what I believe is going to be a very riveting discussion. For those of you not familiar with the Public Sector Technology Exchange, we are an independent forum that discusses the technology challenges impacting government, industry, and education. You can learn more about us on the web or in your favorite social media venue. Before we get started with today's forum, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and we'll send a link out to all registrants. Your questions are very important to us. Over the last month, we have received a multitude of questions coming in from all over America. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. When the webinar concludes, we're going to kindly ask you to take a few minutes and fill out our survey. I'd like to give thanks to our sponsors. Without them, today's forum would not be possible. I'd like to thank Proofpoint. I encourage everyone listening in to download a copy of the Human Factor Report, the link's on your screen. I'd also encourage you to get in touch with Proofpoint's team about your security needs. I'd also like to thank Palo Alto Networks for being a sponsor today. If you would like to get a hold of Palo Alto's team members, their information is on your screen as well. It is now my pleasure to welcome our esteemed panel. We have some really great leaders joining us from all over America, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. We're going to go ahead and start with Hans. Hans, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great. And there you go, we've got your slide. Go ahead, Hans.
Great, James, and thank you for having me today. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on what coast you're on. My name is Holmes Olsen. I'm the Assistant Undersecretary of Homeland Security for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I also focus on anti-terrorism and cybersecurity measures here in the Commonwealth as well. I've been with the Commonwealth for just over 2 years now, and prior to that, I was the interim CEO of a small startup company in the energy sector, and before that was working for the Department of Defense in the intelligence community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed Malky is working to get on, he's having some technical difficulties, so hopefully he'll join us here in a few minutes. But I'd like to go now over, we're going to head over to the great state of Utah. Dr. Eric Harley, kindly introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here in this brave world of public sector technology with all of you. We all probably suffer a little bit from public sector technology disorder, just one letter off from the name of this forum. So it's good to have a community. I'm the CIO here at Utah State University. We've got about 30,000 students in higher education. I like to say we've been bring your own device since 1886. The year we were founded, so distribution, technology, decentralization, and securing is a battle that we all work on together in the public sector. And so I'm glad to be among you and to listen to peers and to participate in this forum and community.
Thank you, Eric. David, kindly introduce yourself.
Thanks, James, and hello to all. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Princeton University, where I have security responsibility for architecture, engineering, risk analysis, disaster recovery, and training and awareness. In summary, my job is really to protect Princeton from the world, but some days it actually feels like I'm protecting the world from Princeton. Happy to be here with all of you today.
We are glad to have you. We're going to leave New Jersey, and we're going to head over to Oregon. Joe, kindly introduce yourself.
Howdy, my name is Joe Voje. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at Oregon Health and Science University. I've been in this capacity for the last 30 days. Prior to that, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of San Francisco. And I'm excited about this forum as well. There's a lot of great exchange of ideas, and I think as we get into it, you'll hear a little bit about my philosophy and why I'm excited about this forum.
Thank you very much, Joe. Next, we're going to head back to California with Jennifer. Jennifer, kindly introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. Thank you for having me part of this esteemed panel. My name is Jennifer Chang. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Solutions at Proofpoint. I've been with Proofpoint for the past 2 years, mostly working with a lot of our advanced threat protection products, including as well as working with our threat intelligence team and operationalizing a lot of the information that we see in our products and working with and hearing from many of our customers in more of a consultative capacity and seeing, what are the threats that are affecting them and how can they best stop them. So excited for the panel.
All right. Well, Jennifer, we are so glad to have you. Now we're going to head over to Matt Morton. Matt, kindly introduce yourself.
Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome from the home of the College World Series, where we recently crowned the University of Florida as champions. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer and Assistant CIO for the University of Nebraska-Omaha. I've been working in security for many years and also in the sidelines of security for many years as well. I participate in a lot of board activities in the area and trying to promote better security around the Midwest, and I'm glad to be here today. It's going to be an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to now head to Los Angeles. Jorge, kindly introduce yourself.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. So my name is Jorge Matta, and if you read through my bio, you'll realize that I'm also a product of the community colleges. So I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Los Angeles Community College District. I like to say that we're the best community college district, and we serve the top 100% in the nation. We are composed of 9 different colleges over the greater Los Angeles area. One of our big initiatives is basically reconstructing more than half of our infrastructure. So we've, this bio says $6 billion, but since then we've actually gotten another $3.3 billion bond pass. So we got close to $10 billion worth of construction going on. And it helps us touch everything, but it also makes us cognizant of the challenges in securing all these new high-tech buildings. So anyway, welcome everyone.
Thank you, Jorge. Rick, kindly introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Rick Howard. I'm the Chief Security Officer for Palo Alto Networks, and if you think you have a challenge, try being a security officer for a company that is mostly security engineers, because they all have an opinion. I'm overall in charge of security for the company. We do have a CISO and a physical security person. They do all the hard work. I just take credit for it. I am in charge of the company's threat intelligence team called Unit 42. And thank you for having me here today.
Rick, I am glad to have you on the call, and I'd actually like you to stay put. The first question for today's forum I'd like to ask you, and this is one that actually came in from several people around the country. So many government and education organizations manage a ton of security products. And I'm guesstimating here, but small organizations may manage 15 to 20 products. Mid-size can be anywhere to 50 to 70 products, and larger organizations can be anywhere from 100 to 150 products. So the question is, how do organizations integrate, maintain, and keep their staff trained on all the security products that they manage?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a trend in the industry that, when I started doing this back in the 90s, the security model that we all paid attention to was something called defense in depth. And when we explained it to our bosses, it was a very complicated system of overlapping circles of security, but really what we all had was 3 tools. We had an antivirus system, we had an intrusion detection system, we had a firewall, and we called that defense in depth. And it worked for a while, but it didn't work for the advanced adversary as they matured. Mature adversaries could pretty much get around any of those kinds of systems. But it's all we had. Sometime around 2010, Lockheed Martin wrote a white paper about kill chains, which completely disrupted the industry. Because instead of just putting 3 controls out in your networks randomly and hope that the bad guys would run into them, the kill chain paper from Lockheed Martin said, we're going to put security controls precisely where the bad guy needs to go, from delivery of the payload to the compromise of the machine to establishing command and control back to their home base to moving lateral within the victim's networks, to finding the data they want to destroy or steal, and then if they wanted to steal the data, how would they exfiltrate it out? So we all thought that was going to solve all of our problems. And it might have, but the problem is what you just mentioned, is that we have this explosion of tools that we're all trying to manage. Even if you're a small organization, you have too many that you can't already manage. And the dirty secret in the security industry is that we make you guys manage that. We make the network defenders manage that. We don't do it for you. And the other dirty secret is your staffs didn't get any bigger. So it's become very hard to do all that work. It's my experience that, you know, you pay for a point product, and we call those products point products because they don't talk to each other. You pay for a point product like, you know, 3 or 4 times. You got to buy the box. You got to buy someone who can maintain it, you know, keep the blinky lights going. You need someone who understands the data coming off of it. And then you probably need someone back in your SOC who can stitch all 15 to 20 tools together and build some sort of comprehensive adversary threat picture, which nobody has any resources to get that done. So we've made it too hard to accomplish this. Now, the vendor community realizes this, and what the latest movement is something called automatic orchestration, where the single vendors are trying to do most of the work for you so you don't have to do it, and that the work that they don't do, they're trying to integrate that with the other security vendors so that the network defenders don't have to do that themselves. So that's the trend, right? And so the hard part about this, though, and this is why this group can, I'd like to hear you guys weigh in. This is a difficult problem for old-timer network defenders to get their heads around, because it goes against all the best practices that you learned in your career. The best practices we learned in the 90s were vendor in depth, never buy a single vendor to do anything, and well, that's the main one, okay? And so what we're telling you now is you're going to have to trust a single vendor to do most of the work. But if you do, there's all these benefits that happen. Automatic updates to everything that needs to be protected. You're going to get a deal on the price tag, all those kinds of things. So it is absolutely the right thing you're going to want to do going forward. But for old timers like most of us on this panel, okay, it's hard to get your hands around that. And I'll just pause and see if you guys have any questions about any of that.
Yeah, and I'll also chime in. I'd like our other panelists to weigh in. But, you know, Rick, we had a multitude of questions that came in with just that, you know, I'm under budget, understaffed, what am I to do? So would anyone else on the panel like to weigh in on that question that I asked Rick, which was really, how do organizations integrate, maintain, and keep their staff trained on the security products that they manage?
So I can comment a little bit on that. This is Jorge Matta. I think Rick's addressing, you know, that dirty secret that it really, there's no way to keep up with this. Even the organizations that are trying it, they're going to have brain drain as people move on to other organizations, and they're going to constantly have gaps. And it does run contrary to our philosophy that we were brought up with, that, you know, you don't give someone all your money or all your love. You know, you can't just trust one thing. There's that lock-in. But on the other hand, if you look at the trends in technology right now, cloud, it's a game changer, because before, locking into a particular vendor without cloud or without this automation meant that you were locked in forever. Now things plug in, and frankly, if that product doesn't work, you can plug in the next one. So I think we have to reevaluate kind of our traditional thoughts. The risk is still there, right, of the lock-in, but the capability to move to different platforms is much greater now. And so I think that should be weighed in our decision making.
I'm glad you said that, because, you know, that it is a risk question, all right? So is the risk of choosing a single vendor or a small set of vendors greater than the security that you might get through an automated system that you were describing, right? So, yeah, and we have to weigh all that, and it is, what you said is absolutely correct. The only way to get through this is to automate everything and to make it as simple as you can. So I believe it's the future.
Anyone else like to chime in on that?
Yeah, this is Matt. You know, Eric, you're absolutely right that it is a risk calculation. One of the things that I would say to Rick, you know, is that, you know, orchestration is what we need to be doing, but we need to also make sure we've got the transparency and the open standards behind that, right? That's how you build that trust, so that you reduce that conversation about the risk of going with a single vendor.
That is absolutely true. You have to, I mean, we're talking about establishing a partnership with that vendor, okay? Not a he sells stuff to me kind of relationship. This is somebody you trust, right? Someone you're going to be with them for a long time, and you're going to benefit when they succeed. So it's kind of a mutual thing. So you're right. All that has to be very transparent.
All right, excellent discussion. Anyone else before we move on to the next question?
This is Eric. I'll just pipe in. You know, on talent acquisition, I compare this trend to trusting more of the automation, business intelligence, and these advanced products. Compare that a little bit to programming. Imagine if we had to develop in assembly and we were doing shift registers. We'd be slow. We'd never keep it up. But as the products develop, become more automated, become easier to use, I think that's what we have to keep in mind, that it becomes easier to assemble and use these as platforms, and you let the brains of the automated system do that work. And so I'm always looking for products, technologies, and solutions that push us up the layer stack so that I don't need to maintain that deep assembly level of knowledge. And so I appreciate the products that are heading that direction.
Thank you, Eric. That's an excellent point.
I really like that. And then I think the best practice that emerges, though, after if we jettison vendor in depth, okay, the one that emerges now in this modern age is you should seek vendors who integrate, who subscribe to the automatic orchestration philosophy and integrate with other products as a matter of course. So that would be the new best practice.
Rick, kindly just take a moment. I put up on the screen for our audience all over America to look at. You wrote a very interesting white paper that I think is worth mentioning. Just kindly take a quick moment to tell our audience about that. And I have the link there on the screen, so I encourage everyone to look that up.
Well, thanks. I wrote this because I was interested in how we got to where we are. So this is sort of a little bit of a history lesson there to figure out how we went from defense in depth to kill chain to automatic orchestration to this partnership and even a different kind of a security consumption model. It's kind of where we're going now. I just tell you one short story here, right? I was trying to figure out who invented the term defense in depth, and everybody claimed ownership of that, but I couldn't find anybody that would actually justify that they get credit for it. I put it out on social media, and all the military people came out and said, "Oh yeah, we invented defense in depth back in the 2000s," and I realized that's way too late. I finally found a guy by the name of Fred Cohen. He wrote a couple of papers in 1991. He didn't say he invented the phrase, but he mentioned that everybody was using defense in depth in their enterprise philosophy. So I called him. I said, "Hey, Fred, are you the guy that invented the term defense in depth for all network defenders?" He goes, "No, I didn't invent it, but I was probably the first guy that wrote it down. So we're going to give the title to Fred for being the first guy to write defense in depth down in a white paper." So there you go.
All right.
I think this is Joe Voje. I think I have to claim credit for that. I think I did that.
All right, so you got to put Joe on the paper next to. He's claiming it.
Excellent.
Hey, I want to switch gears now, and this is also a question that came in a great deal. Hans, the greater Boston area is home to over 45 education institutes. Can you comment on the future talent pool for cybersecurity?
Yeah, great question. So that is a very large initiative for our governor, Governor Baker here in the Commonwealth, is to expand that talent pool, widen the funnel, if you will, and to generate talent at all levels. You know, not just at a four-year degree, but we're looking for PhDs and for people coming out of high school and people coming out of community colleges with differing levels of cybersecurity techniques and savviness, if you will, and to really make Boston a hub. We are the hub city, ecosystem for companies to come and essentially plant seeds here and create, you know, really robust cybersecurity companies here in the United States. So working with a number of institutions, a lot of schools have stood up cybersecurity programs. one that I will mention because I'm affiliated with it. I teach at Boston College, has stood up a Master's of Science in Cybersecurity, focused on policy and governance. So it's not just the technical aspects that we're looking for, but the surrounding ecosystem, if you will, that goes along with cybersecurity.
Excellent. You know, interesting enough, I want to open this up to the panel, but I also want to ping Joe and Rick on this one. You know, Joe, if you could just comment real quick, you know, as we talk about this, you know, cyber recruiting, you know, what are some of the strategies for training, team building, and recruiting that you would suggest implementing to our audience?
Yeah, we've in my former role as CISO for City of San Francisco, you know, obviously no shortage of terrific talent sitting there in the Bay Area, but we found that we had great success when we were recruiting for diversity. So when we were putting up postings initially, we just weren't getting the type and quality of candidates that we were looking for, mostly because of some of the language that we were using in our job postings, and we weren't leveraging the full capabilities of social media to get that. So it's very typical in you know, your stereotypical government agencies, you know, write the job description, you know, post it onto your own website, you know, don't do any social media outreach, wait for them to come to you. And we really felt to grow our program and increase the talent level of our employees that we had to actively go out and recruit folks. So we kind of created a guerrilla campaign around reaching out through our own personal social networks and our professional networks in social media to go out and grab people. And what we found was that when we were leveraging those platforms and specifically targeting underrepresented groups within our organization, that we found some amazing talent. You know, I'd love to tell personal stories for all the folks that I recruited in San Francisco, but one in particular was a lady that I recruited from an underrepresented group. In cyber, it's very rare to find women working in this. I mean, IT is definitely male-dominated, cybersecurity even more so. But we found an amazing talent, and she brought a capability to our organization that had been lacking forever, and it was just an amazing effort. And so I encourage groups to, one, look, if you're looking around you and you see a lot of the same flavor, look for a different flavor and see what that brings to your team. And then, you know, don't forget that you're competing against a lot of innovative tech companies who can provide pinball machines and popcorn and open bars and all of those type of things, and you typically don't have that in your organization as education and government. So you really have to think outside the box to find that talent.
Well, and speaking of the box, I want to talk about the cookie box, one of my favorite things with Girl Scouts. One of the neat things, Palo Alto Networks actually did a really neat, and I've got a question here for Rick, but I want to preface it with a little story. I'm an Eagle Scout, and back when I was in Boy Scouts in the 80s, we had a friend of our troop, John Witt, that took all us kids into Honeywell, and you know, and we all remember where computers were in the 80s and how they morphed in the 90s, but it absolutely matters. So, you know, this is just an announcement I saw on Palo Alto's website, but Rick, talk a little bit about this. What's going on with the Girl Scouts? And, you know, most of us know them for the Thin Mint cookies, but you all are definitely ratcheting it up quite a bit. So kindly talk about it.
Yeah, well, to piggyback on what we were saying before, the shortage of women in our industry is just ridiculously stupid, all right? Forbes magazine said last year that there's only 11% of women in the cybersecurity workforce. And if you add a minority on top of that, if you have a black woman or a Hispanic woman or any other kind of minority, that percentage drops to under 1%. and you all know how much the shortage of qualified cybersecurity personnel there are. There's over 1 million jobs unfilled right now. So clearly, if we have any hope of closing that gap, we're going to have to hire a bucket load of women to come in and help us do this. So we've known about this problem for the last 5-10 years, and we've been admiring it for a long time. At Palo Alto Networks, we decided to do something about it. So we partnered with the Girl Scouts to build the curriculum for 18 cybersecurity merit badges for their almost 2 million girls in their program, K-5 through 12. All right, and it's going to be roughly divided between 2 buckets of instruction, online safety, and then just general purpose network defender kinds of things. And this is us stepping up and saying we think that this is a problem we can solve. We have to inject these kinds of leadership roles and technology roles for women and minorities in our industry, and we can definitely influence it by going right to the Girl Scouts. The Girl Scouts have a phenomenal program. If you guys have never paid attention to them, they have a fantastic infrastructure for developing content, instructional content, rolling it out in pieces as a test bed, and then rolling it out to all the Girl Scout troops leaders so they can train their troops and get the merit badges. It's really phenomenal, and I'm so excited that I've worked with a company like Palo Alto Networks who can invest in something like this as a long-term game. I'm very excited.
Thank you, Rick. You know, one thing I wanted to comment on, Bill Britton has been a speaker on our panel in the past, and he's the CIO over at California Polytechnic University, or Cal Poly. And I had a chance to go observe their cybersecurity training center, and they actually run a program for high school students. And one of the things that they look at, they're not looking for the kid that can give the quickest answer or fix whatever the glitch is. They're looking for the kid that can problem solve whatever an unknown problem could be in the future. And they just had 2 weeks ago did a huge event down there on the central coast of California. But we're seeing a lot of things, and like I said, my hat's off to what Palo Alto is doing. I really like some of Joe's comments on that as well. If there aren't any other comments, oh, Jennifer. Please.
As the only woman on this panel and a woman in cybersecurity, I did want to comment and say that, you know, I'm going to make it a little personal here in saying that in my journey here in cybersecurity, mentorship has been tremendously important. And for those of you who are fathers out there who have daughters who like puzzles and solving problems and have a keen interest in math and building up and cultivating that in them, and that sense of curiosity is incredibly important and plays a tremendous role in, you know, women thinking that it's possible for them to be successful there. So hats off to all of you and all the efforts that are being made to engage more women in the community. But, you know, of course, community and that personal touch and building relationships is extremely important.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I am going to shift gears now. My next question is for Eric. Eric, recently your university was compromised by a hacker going after credentials for employees' payroll direct deposit. Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened and how you all were able to remedy that situation?
You bet. I think as most of us are discovering, either through bad experience or other ways, is quite frankly the username and the password is dead. We have to find ways to get beyond that. With the title of this presentation, which is you know, the human factors involved, people really get involved in security when it impacts them directly. And it hits you pretty directly if your paycheck doesn't show up in your account. Very simply, classic phishing email practices. Click on them, give them your username and password. Of course, in enterprise, we tell people, well, don't share your password anywhere else. While at the same time, we're enabling single sign-on like there's no tomorrow, kicking ourselves in our foot. So they get a username and password, log in, electronically change a direct deposit entry inside the HR system. The hacker then uses that same username and password to get into email, because of course we're using single sign-on, deletes the notification, just watches for that coming from the system. So when does the user notice that something is wrong? When the money is gone. And then by the time they contact us, that money's international and gone 3 steps. And as is usual, how do we traditionally find out about hacks and compromises? After the damage has been done.
Thank you on that, and I tell you, if it's not just happening in Utah. We did a live event here in Sacramento about a year ago, and Dr. Larry Gilbert, who recently retired from Sac State, commented where they had someone going in after there were 7 people that had check authority, and they were able to get on their account, just doing small things, sending a message to someone, schedule an appointment, and at the last hour they called them. So. And again, many times that is the hard part. People get in your network and then they move all around. I wanted to talk to you, and I'm also going to ask Mohammed to comment on this too, though. Your university recently completed an implementation for dual-factor authentication for your employees. What I want you to talk about, not only why you did that, but many times we have with our audience today, I'd say about 80 to 90% of them are either in a government organization, K through 12, or higher education. And typically, when you try to present an idea to government, there's an information review board, a board of directors, sometimes in university systems. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about, I've got a couple slides I'll put up here, but about how you got, I believe there are 8 schools in the Utah university system, how you decided to do this and how you got everyone on board with it.
Right. Well, the start of the 12-step program is recognize you have a program. Recognize you have a problem. When we talk about the hacking of the payroll direct deposit, we regret those hacks, but there's nothing better than real experience to drag that along, to get people interested and paying attention. So we knew username and passwords were dead, and we love to present data to folks, help them understand. People understood the problem because people understand phishing, and because of the direct deposit things, they understood the need to do something about it. Now the question is, what do we do? So we started presenting a lot of data. We joined together as a group of 8 CIOs here in the system of higher education in Utah, and we zoned in on some data out of the 2015 Verizon data breach investigation reports that evaluated 80,000 security incidents across 61 countries, and as they categorized these, they mapped a lot of the compromises to the SANS top 20, the CSC security controls, the top compensating security controls. James, if you'll flip to that slide, the one right after this one. So there we go. From top to bottom, they allocated 100 points to the ones that, if they had been in place, which ones would have been most effective at preventing that particular compromise. And the top 2, blowing every other control out of the water, was dual-factor authentication, and on the back end, keeping your web services patched. And so at this point, all it took was telling a story. We'd go to administration, we'd go to folks and say, hey, username and password is dead. So if we do dual-factor authentication, why is that so effective? Look, if I give my username and password out to the entire country of Russia, and I've got dual-factor authentication in place, my Apple Watch will beep, my phone will beep. If that wasn't me trying to log in, I can hit the red button and deny it immediately. I can stop the damage right there, and now suddenly I'm reminded, oh, maybe my credentials are compromised, I better go change my password. But I've stopped the damage. and I'm notified instantly that some compromise has occurred. And that story resonated with a lot of people. And so we eventually got a memorandum out of those stories from our state board of regents, using data, using stories together. And it takes data and stories, because people aren't convinced by facts alone. They've got to have some emotion and some personal involvement. The combination of those two produced the statement you see on there, where we entered the requirement to do that. And off we went.
Thank you, Eric. That's excellent. I want to come back to this topic, and I just want to put a pin in it real quick. One of our guests, David Cherry from Princeton University, has to leave a little bit early, and I wanted to get a question to him while we have him on there. David, I had a question for you. There's a great deal of conversation on security awareness and training for the positions you support, but in your opinion, what do you think a security leader should really be responsible for?
Thanks for that question, James. And you're right, there's always a great deal of chatter in the security community on the cost and effectiveness of security awareness training efforts throughout the community. There's also a lot of research that one can find, I think, to support whichever position one subscribes to, both positive and negative. I, for one, believe in the value of a strong security awareness program. It's actually embedded in my group's mission statement, which includes a pillar that charges us with an expansive and continuous security awareness program. I also have a staff member dedicated to this full time, which I believe is the key if awareness and training is to be done with excellence. And I've seen a constant increase in interest in our programs with a measurable impact on our risk and our security benchmarks. I believe that our user population really are all breach detectors. You know, you can build the best architecture and have all the best solutions, but if an end user gets tricked or can't recognize abnormal behavior on their technology they're using, then all the technical work is for naught. So it's our goal to make security a cultural mindset, and we can't do that without a strong awareness mindset and focusing program, and I vote yes for security mission.
I want to ask you one other quick question, and I appreciate you making time for us. Can you tell our audience an example of one interesting solution you have used that has dramatically impacted security awareness on your campus and the positive impacts you've seen from it?
Yeah, absolutely, James. At the beginning of this year, we implemented what we call the Fishbowl. That's fish with a PH, obviously. The university's under a constant stream of phishing attacks, and the scammers are making the email attacks look more and more credible, many of them looking like they're coming right from a Princeton account with a Princeton website. In addition to our focused awareness and training sessions on phishing to teach people about this, the Fishbowl was created. And the premise is simple. When a member of the community receives an email that's a possible phishing attempt, they check the Fishbowl website that's linked off the information security page. If the message is listed in the Fishbowl, then the user simply deletes it. If it's not, they send it to a Fishbowl email address, and we review it and add it to the website very quickly, usually in under 10 minutes, 24/7. And we've seen a decrease in the number of clicks on phishing attempts because of this, as well as a dramatic number in the amount of compromised accounts on our campus. And our website analytics show us that the Fishbowl page is one of the most frequented by our entire community. So I'm all about training our population on knowing what's normal, giving them a quick and easy way to report when something doesn't feel right, and the Fishbowl fits this formula and has been a great success to my mission in Princeton overall.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. I want to switch gears. I have a few more questions for the panelists, and I want to jump back to this kind of dual-factor authentication. Mohammed, I know on May 27th, 2016, the state of Colorado's governor, the chief of staff, and all the cabinet members got on board with the governor's office of IT plan to proceed with implementing two-factor authentication for your email service. Can you please comment on that?
Thank you, James, for having me. Yes, it took the governor's office and chief of staff and all the cabinet members to see the value of enabling two-factor authentication for the emails. My first request, being with the state for almost over 18 years, I had the request for implementing the two-factor authentication on one of the major systems on 2007. And all that time, I was not successful to convince the state to spend the money and to implement two-factor authentication. But when we had too many and a huge increase in phishing attacks and on state emails, and we have seen users actually clicking, and we had some significant impact, then at that time it became obvious that we have to do something about it. So 2015, we started the planning to implement the two-factor authentication. And
so now you all are a little bit over a year down the road. How has that helped?
Actually, we have 100% enforcement without whining from the end users. Having 26,000 plus users, being able to change the behavior of the users by providing second factor with all other challenges that the panelists they are aware of, by providing a variety of options of consuming the two-factor authentication, we have 100% enforcement. And we are not stopping at the email service. Actually, we started a year ago on having a program for two-factor authentication where we are putting in place the platform and then adding the critical system being in-premise or in the cloud to be consuming the two-factor authentication.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Before we move off of, I have a few more questions for Jennifer, Matt, and Jorge. Before we move off of dual-factor authentication, anyone else want to comment? All right, we're going to switch gears. Joe, I have a question for you. I've actually heard you say that you're hearing it for the first time here on the PSTE, but I've heard you say that cybersecurity is like the children's storybook Stone Soup by Marcia Brown. Can you share a little bit, first of all, for those of you that don't know about Stone Soup, can you give us just a quick, little tidbit on that? And then tell us how cybersecurity is like this children's book.
Yeah, it actually has multiple origins, all over Europe, all over Asia. So I don't think we can attribute to any one person. I don't think it's ever been directly attributed to a single author. The basic concept of the story, and there's different versions of it, is that a beggar comes to town. It's hard times. And they go to the door and ask someone for food, and they go door to door to door. Everyone is holding on to their own resources. They're very, it's hard times. So in an attempt to get fed, they go to the town square. They find a little cauldron. They fill it with some snow, and light a fire, and it's basically just boiling water at this point. And then they're sipping it, and people are curious. Why is this person boiling this water, right? Comes to them. He takes out a magic stone, or this stone, and puts it into the water, and says, "Oh, you know what? This soup is very, very good, but it could use some carrots." Someone disappears, from the crowd, and runs and grabs carrots, brings back, and then the process repeats. Hey, it could use a little salt. It could use a little potato. It could use a little meat. And everyone's pulling their resources is basically what's happening. So this whole community, even though they're all very impoverished, when they come together, they can create this delicious soup and nourish everyone, and everyone's better for it. And that's kind of the state of cybersecurity in many regards, especially in the public sector. Is we have a lot of great tools. Like I love David's Fishbowl story there. I took quick notes because I think that's something that we could use here. When we pull those ideas, we pull our resources and pull our intelligence together, then we can actually become better for it and stronger. And so I'm a big advocate. When I was at the city of San Francisco, we were 55 different departments united only in name. We did not coordinate efforts from a technology standpoint or cybersecurity standpoint. And so I used this stone soup philosophy to try and get those 55 departments to start trusting each other and sharing the good ideas that they had individually within IT and cybersecurity. And what I was able to achieve within my tenure there was that we broke down a lot of walls really quick. We started deploying things centrally with a decentralized execution so that people could still use these powerful tools but use them in the way that they wanted, because otherwise we were all individually procuring, and vendors, they'd love to sell it to you 55 times, but it's a lot better when you can buy maybe something on an economy of scale and get some of the bigger toys, the more capable toys, rather than the entry-level model that you can only afford with your limited departmental budget. So we started to do a lot of that work, and some areas we were very successful. In other areas, we still had a lot of room to grow. But this can be done in anything from training efforts to procurement of tools, to policies, to just simply great ideas on how to approach training and awareness. So I kind of encourage folks. That's why I would get excited about these type of these forums, because it is an opportunity to learn from each other, take great ideas away, and then potentially contribute your own ideas and successes to the group, so that everyone grows from them. So that's my stone soup philosophy, and why I try and advance that in the communities that I happen to work and live in.
Thank you, Joe. And for our audience listening in all over America, we're right about the tip of the hour, and we're going to try to run things another 15 minutes. I have some questions for Jennifer, Matt, and Jorge. So, and as we move off of, I love the stone soup philosophy, and I too love the fishbowl. You can't see me in virtual, but I've been taking a lot of notes too. This information is excellent. But Jennifer, one of the things I want to talk to you about is threat intelligence has become a buzzword among many vendors. But what does it really mean to an organization? What is the real significance of having some kind of threat intelligence? And what does it really matter to, government, higher education, K through 12? Please comment on that.
Sure. So first of all, I want to distinguish the difference between threat data and threat intelligence. And by threat intelligence, what I would say is true threat intelligence is where the data has been qualified, likely by a threat researcher or an actual human being looking at this information. The second piece being that it's representative of your organization, that as you're looking to operate, you can operationalize that, and that's really sort of that third point. This information can be acted upon, right? Meaning that you can use it to create a signature, rule, configuration, whatever it may be, to stop that future threat from the same campaign, using the same indicators of compromise to ahead of time, right? So really, not all security vendors have a rigorous practice of qualifying their threat research, and most of that threat research doesn't even necessarily make it back into the products that they provide. But as Rick mentioned earlier in terms of automatic orchestration, a lot of that is an effort to, what can we do to operationalize threat intelligence, threat research, or data and information? But it is always, at the end of the day, up to the organization to make that applicable to you, and ultimately, what is relevant to your user community. So I'd say that this is really significant in GovEd because, the technical nature of threats are really no different than other industries, but the dynamics of your user community, the open infrastructure, the types of data that you need protecting is really what sets you apart from other industries, and having sort of that additional context to be able to operationalize that information is really key. And one of the things that we do, at Proofpoint, one of the things that we're doing is, as we look at the threat landscape, broadly speaking, how do we segment that data to make it more meaningful for our audience and our customers in looking across industries or geographies. And so this is actually one of the great areas where, you can partner with your vendors or solution providers, because while we may have that information there, we often have conversations about how to best derive the data to apply to your tools based on how you want to ingest that information and apply that to your organization. So the analogy that had been shared with me by our threat research team was actually, when you think about threat intelligence provided by either feeds or other sources, you can think about it as asking a home cook to cater a wedding, right? while it's not impossible for you internally or your internal team to do some of the threat research yourself and derive the intelligence or the threat data, it's difficult, right? And so most of your vendors and the teams that we have in terms of providing threat research and information, you know, we're really taking this and trying to operate at scale and being able to apply, you know, and make recommendations to this is how you can actually apply this information in your environment.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Jennifer, one of the overwhelming questions we got in, because just about everybody, I mean, everybody in the world uses Microsoft, you know, we got a lot of people about how to, you know, what do I do with Office 365 and cybersecurity? Could you just take a quick moment to respond to that? And like I said, we had several questions from all over the country come in on that.
Sure. So we actually hear this across all industry, and possibly especially in higher education, where they're moving a lot to cloud platforms, and this is also true of people who are moving to G Suite. So this is where, you know, cloud security really means more than just looking at the cloud application itself, right? And earlier, I think it was mentioned where we're looking at sort of diversification of risk, and, you know, putting all your sort of eggs in one basket, so to speak, is not necessarily in the best interest of everyone in the organization. So, you know, really being able to determine, you know, the decision to move to Office 365 is typically driven broadly by IT and for collaboration purposes. But the question is whether or not the additional features, security features that Microsoft has built into Office 365 really serves the purpose of your security team, and whether the information, even the threat intelligence that's claimed there, right, is really operationalized in the way your team responds to incidents or obtains visibility in what's going on in your environment, right? So, you know, even in terms of, you know, standard security practices, you know, we're hearing a lot lately about massive campaigns such as, you know, like WannaCry, and while these aren't necessarily relevant to Office 365 specifically, but, you know, this does kind of change the game in terms of how we're thinking about people being compromised. So at the end of the day, right, that decision to move to Office 365 does, of course, mean, you know, make sure that your IT team or your broader IT team is aware of your needs and what can make you more effective, and not only on the security side, but on the compliance side, and understanding, you know, what kind of visibility you can truly get and whether you can actually act on it.
Thank you, Jennifer. I have a couple questions for Jorge and Matt. I know this hour is going really quick, and I tell you, Jorge, I could ask you about 20 questions, and if you all get a chance outside this event, take a look at some of the unique things that the Los Angeles Community College District is doing. They are innovative. I will tell everyone this, I'm here in the Sacramento area, and there was an assembly bill passed, and what's happening right now in California, we have, I think it's like 23 university systems that get all our funding, and we're having trouble because so many people are applying to get in. California is a big state, and they've started doing pilot projects at community colleges where they're going to be offering four-year degrees, and Jorge's school's doing that. And essentially, this is going to blow your mind for anyone that has a kid in college like me. You could go to Jorge's college and get a BA degree for under $10,000. And I know there's a virtual shock that just went around the world. What? So Jorge, you might be getting some emails on that, but what I wanted to talk to you about, and before I do this, I want to preface the demographics that you handle. And if you haven't driven through Los Angeles, it's massive. The Los Angeles Community College District has some unique demographics. You have over 250,000 students, 900 square miles of campuses through 9 colleges. And your team back in December had a cyber attack. Please tell me what happened. I mean, cyber attack in this huge area. Tell us what happened and how you were able to remedy the situation.
Well, yeah. So a couple of things. One is I think there was the human element is that we were targeted. You know, someone understood that this attack happened during the holidays. So, you know, going back to staffing, when are you going to be at your weakest, right? They know that if you're by yourself. But a lot of things that we had put in place kicked in, and we were able to quickly execute our plan. So I would say that something that was extremely disruptive did not turn into a tragedy. I think that's a lesson learned in all security planning. You know, the board had me in front of one of their committees, and they said, "Can you assure us that you can protect all our information?" And I said, "No one can give you that. I can assure you that we have a plan that we can improve, that has been demonstrated to be successful." The attack was it was a ransomware, but it was a very different type of ransomware. Typically, it's someone who's clicked on a link. This one had an element of brute force in it. And one of the lessons we learned was compliance is not security. So we passed the audits, but the threat agents are continuing to improve. And some things, though, it's kind of like a low-level fever you can think of. If you don't pay attention, it could turn into something very traumatic, and that's what this was. It was someone taking advantage of something and then getting into something and causing disruption. Now, thankfully, the fact that I'm still a CIO tells you that there was no breach of personal information, which is good, right? We got a lot of there were a lot of tough moments, a lot of tough questions, but we had all the data, and so the legal teams were involved. But it was very traumatic for the organization, I would say. But it was very helpful in, you know, what my peers and this panel have been describing, in getting a very personal story to the board, executing on those recommendations that we know are best practices. You know, so all these things about two-factor, those have already been vetted. Let's execute them and then prioritize them. They were a little surprised when I came back, and they're like, "Well, Jorge, how much money do you need?" And I go, "I have about 6 months of work that doesn't require any money. It just requires you to charge me with that responsibility." That kind of blew them away, because I'm with David. You know, this awareness, embedding it into the DNA of our organization, the automation. I would say the security awareness is the defense in depth, and that's one of the things that saved us. We had just completed an entire year of security awareness training, so we didn't get caught with some of the things that others would have gotten. So I think you know, as we get such a diverse group of people here, we have to protect all types of people. And frankly, you know, the more affluent you are, you have more ability to recover from a cyber attack. But we have a lot of very vulnerable groups that seek our help in education. To them, I mean, losing $1,000 from their checking account could mean the end of their way of life, right? To someone else, it may be, you know, you don't go to that vacation. So we have I would say, a higher level of responsibility in protecting all of these identities. I have 3.5 million identities online, so wow. It's something that I think about every day.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Folks, I want to take a quick pause to our national audience. I want to be mindful of your time. I know we had said this is a 60-minute webinar, and we're pushing on it, but I'm going to ask our panelists to stay with us just another moment. Our audience that's come in through America has not budged. This is a riveting conversation. I wish we could go longer, but one of the reasons I saved Matt Morton here towards the end of it is this next part we're going to talk about is a little bit different. We've been talking about cybersecurity, but we're going to talk about what happens when it goes after your buildings, your infrastructure, your irrigation system. So I have one last question for Matt, and if you all could just stay with us about 10 more minutes, we'll try to wrap the event up. Matt, last year we saw the Mirai botnet attack on Deutsche Telekom in Germany literally go in, use the Internet of Things to attack the organizations. As organizations look down the road where future attacks can happen, please comment on the relationship between cybersecurity and physical systems that operate things like buildings and irrigation systems.
Thanks, James. You know, I think that we can think of multiple large-scale breaches that began as an intrusion on one of the industrial control systems or a secondary system that was not the primary data repository, right? And I think we're seeing that now, right? I mean, nobody's mentioned the word NotPetya, but that's a that ransomware attack that's occurring mostly in Europe, but has hit the United States, is coming into organizations on things like, for example, manufacturing plant floors, hospital entry points, that are starting with systems that are not protected. What we've done is we've started a research institute, and that research institute looks at this cyber issue when it crosses over to the physical world. So things like you said, buildings. Are the building control systems that control the blinds, for example, or the heat or any of the cooling, are those exposed? Now, of course, your facilities folks always say that they're not connected to the internet, but I think we know that sometimes that doesn't always work out that way. And
yeah, and I mean, even in our houses today, our TVs, fridges, I mean, there's so many, areas to control.
It is growing. Yeah. Yes, it is growing. When they buy that equipment, when you put up a building, it's a 20, 30-year investment, right? And so if you put the IT for that building, and that is not going to be refreshed for another 20 years, there's a lot that changes there, right? And so a lot of the ransomware and things that are happening, they're targeting systems like XP, Windows 7. Well, we all have moved on from that except for these control systems, and I think that's evident. Cadbury Chocolate just released today that they were impacted in Australia by this, and so that kind of shows you.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of shows you the risk there, right? And then it crosses over then into your people. We've been talking a lot about hiring and how we hire those folks, right? Building from within and working with those facilities folks, the people that are electricians and whatnot, and teaching them in cybersecurity can help provide you a better spread into those areas, so that you get more eyes on what's going on. Perhaps maybe they'll bring things to you, and we're actually in our research looking at products and assisting people with the implementation of those products in their buildings that actually do many of the same things that both Proofpoint and Palo Alto do, but maybe at a smaller scale, like an irrigation system. If you miss water something, maybe that's not that big of a deal, except, for example, if it's a large farm and those farms are providing the food for our country, and right, it over fertilizes it and kills those crops, right? So I mean, there's a lot of crossover into our physical protection area in this area.
Thank you, Matt, on that. Folks, I know our time's getting tight, but I would like to give, we're going to wrap up here in just a moment. I have a few closing remarks, but I'd like to give our panelists just an opportunity for a quick closing remark. We'll go around the horn. Hans, if you just had some closing comments, and then we'll go around everyone for just one last word before we wrap up today. Hans.
Thank you very much, Jim. This has been a wonderful discussion, and thank you to all the listeners as well. For me, it's a couple things. One, it's yes, technology is very important. It's driving our day-to-day lives, but the people are the most important thing underlying all of this. And for us, it's training, education. So how do we train and educate our workforce, and for the generations that are coming behind us to be proactive in using their material and technology in a safe and secure manner. So that's our big area of focus right now is on training education of the workforce.
Thank you, Hans. Mohammed, last word before we wrap up today.
Thank you, James, and thank you for having me. I think if I want to share anything for our success here with the state of Colorado is shifting how we look at the users from the weakest link that we always like to call our users the weakest link. We want to call them the human IPS and IDS. Basically, they'll be the one who will help us to uncover any suspicious activity and give them a mechanism to report that so we can take actions.
Okay, thank you. Eric.
Stone soup, amen, and have humans help.
I think a lot of us are stealing stone soup after today. Stone soup and fishbowl were pretty neat ideas there, and I agree with that. As I mentioned to everyone too, David had to leave for a call, so we'll jump to Joe. Joe, last word there.
I just appreciate the opportunity to grow my professional network here, and hook up with some great thought leaders in the industry. I hope that everyone listening in has learned something or gotten something out of it that will help improve their program incrementally, and be safe out there.
Thank you. Jennifer.
You know, as we already talked about, threats are going after humans, so the human touch is absolutely required for effectiveness. So not only training your humans, but really equipping the people on your team, and hopefully that influences what skill sets are really required of security professionals in the future, you know, in terms of, you know, making the most of working with technology as well as really understanding what underlies that.
Thank you. Matt.
Yeah, thanks, James. Appreciated listening to everybody today. It's been very enlightening. I would just say, you know, focus on fundamentals, right? That's the key thing there, is building that operational excellence and working with your people and building them and growing them so they not only stick with you, but if they do leave, they at least contribute to the larger cause.
I appreciate that, and I tell you, you've got me intrigued. We might be doing some future PSTE events on physical building security. Again, it's a really riveting discussion. Jorge, last word before we wrap up today.
I'm just say that all the things that I've learned today are very compelling, and it just kind of drives the point of automation and scaling, and that this is kind of a continuing journey. You know, whatever you know right now, be ready to reevaluate it periodically. Make sure it's
That's for sure. That is for sure. Thanks on that, Jorge. Rick.
Two quick things. Support your local Girl Scouts and seek vendors who integrate. You are pursuing automatic orchestration as fast as you can.
All right. Well, hey, I want to thank you, our audience, for staying with us. I know we went over a little bit, but we had a great amount of people coming in from all over America. You can hear the virtual clapping, but I want to thank for our esteemed panel. You all were brilliant. I want to thank our sponsors, Proofpoint and Palo Alto Networks. We have some upcoming forums with the PSTE. They're on your screen, and we'll certainly notify you about those. Again, if you'd like to get in touch with our sponsor, Proofpoint, their team is on the screen right now, as well as Palo Alto Networks. If you have an interest in being a panelist or sponsoring a future PSTE forum, please contact me, James Baker. On behalf of the Public Sector Technology Exchange, I want to thank you for joining us for Hackers and the Human Factor. I'm James Baker. Make it a great day.